Welcome, welcome, welcome to yet another Theology Talk, you like or not. I am your host, Rev the Saint, and I am honored to be sitting next to Reverend Naomi Washington-Leapheart.
Washington-Leapheart, yes. Yes.
I got it right. Because, Leapheart, Washington.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. Listen, we've been trying to make it here, and here we are.
Here we are.
Welcome to Theology Talk, you like or not. I am your creator, curator, investigator, sometime instigator, but definitely a liberator, Rev the Saint. And for a few moments of your sacred time in this sacred space, I invite you to tune in as we talk good, talk back, talk loud, talk smack, talk life and love, talk true, talk music, talk art, talk faith, hope, peace, joy, talk justice, talk God. Let's talk.
Naomi, welcome. Thank you for taking time out to sit next to me.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yes.
I'm excited. It had to simmer a bit, but this is the time.
Yes. It's always at the right time, at the right place.
That's right.
And so we're here. Please share. Let's just jump right into it, as we always do here on TTYL or not.
Okay.
Define theology, how you understand it, and how have you come to do the work that you do in your faith journey throughout all of it?
So I think at the most core level, I define theology as words about, musings about, imagination about God. And it's funny that we're talking about this because I teach part-time at Villanova theology classes. So undergraduate students. And for the first time, I'm now teaching on the inside. Villanova has a degree program set up at a state correctional institution.
Yes.
It's a 40-year-old program. It's one of the oldest in the country. And I have the opportunity now to teach theology on the inside. And this past week in class, we had to stop and take a moment to acknowledge that all of our theologizing is good, thoughtful, but speculation about God. Because there was some question, we're reading people's opinions on the matter. And I said, well, wait a minute. Let's not diminish opinions. We all have opinions. Some we give value and credence to, and others we don't. But it's all speculation. And what I want people to do when they're theologizing is at least be intentional and honest about the speculation that they're doing.
Say more about that. Example.
So, I grew up in church. I'm a church girl. Don't ever remember a time where I wasn't in, a Black Baptist church. But for a long time, what I was doing, my theologizing, was really inherited practice. I was doing what I saw other people do. I was saying what I heard other people say. And at some point, I had to decide that I needed to adopt a theology that came from my own speculation, my own imagination about God. And so that's what I mean by intentionality. Let's at least support and promote the theologizing that feels authentic to us and not something we just inherited or something we feel obligated to. But our language is limiting, right?
Yeah.
So all of the words we could use to describe the nature of God or the activity of God are limited. And so we're trying to put precise words to the inutterable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The transcendent. And that's the challenge. How do we use our limited language, our limited imagination to describe something that's so beyond us? But we try. And that's the beauty of it. We try.
Spirit was definitely in that neighborhood with me this week. We're coming up against, by the time this airs, it will be probably close to after Lent season, or we're in towards the Easter.
Yeah.
But oftentimes during that particular season, we're giving up something, right? And my thing is to give up social media. And I've done 2-3 years without social media because I get into theological debate with folks who is speaking for God in ways that I think does limit God because we're limited by our experience with God from our lived experience. Sure. Not to limit our lived experience, but our lens is just where it is because that's how we encounter God, the divine, and others from our lived experience.
Right.
What is the harm? What is the harm that is done when we speak for God? Through our lived experience, because I want to add that there is something that it does to us when we share, give a testimony, and share the goodness of God and how we experience God. But I also think that there's been harm.
Yeah. So not only I think is our language imprecise and insufficient to help to describe God or God's activity, but we are conditioned to assign value and influence and power to the things that we think are of God and by God.
Like,
so if God rules creation with an iron fist, then we sanctify a kind of rule that is domineering, that is power over, because we think that's the way God operates. And why wouldn't God operate the way humanity should operate, right? So I think that theology is the framework for all of the systems of oppression. Bad theology is the framework for all of the systems of oppression that we experience. If you can put it in God's hands or put it in God's mouth,
label it as God,
label it as godly, then you can justify it in this natural realm too. So I think that's the danger, that theologizing isn't just an abstract activity, which is why I try to tell my students all the time. You think we're just talking, talking about these heavy concepts, and we are, but there are practical and ethical implications.
Yes.
And that's why we got to at least be as honest and intentional as we can when we theologize, because ideas have consequences.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So part of my work, I think, both at the city in some ways and in the classroom, is to invite people to really tell me why you believe that. Where'd you get that from?
What are the responses?
Well, people, there are things that are untouchable. So my ideas about God are untouchable. If you think of your faith as a house of cards, to manipulate any part of the house compromises the integrity of the whole house. So if I'm asking you to tell me why that card is what it is, you might go down a rabbit hole you can't come back from. And that is really scary to people. But what I really want them to say is, wait a minute, I'm scared to go. Because that in and of itself is a radical honesty that I think we don't have. I teach this class at Villanova called Do Black Lives Matter to God? And in the first couple of classes, before we get into anything, I have students say, what's at stake for you asking that question? What do you stand to gain? What do you stand to lose? What concerns do you have about this exploration, right? And when students are most honest with me and with themselves, they say, what if at the end of this, I find that I'm utterly unsure about all the things I walked in here with?
Yes.
What will that mean for me?
Yes. For
my social relationships or relationships with people in my house of worship, for my relationship with the divine. Yes. What will that mean? And so it's a scary proposition. It is. It's risky.
It's risky. It's risky. Going back to that, that's amazing that you're offering that class in an institution that's a PWI.
Yeah, Catholic PWI.
Wow, my God, on today. Bless you, my child.
Yeah, I'm going to do it until somebody find out.
They ain't on to you yet.
Where this podcast don't show. No, but I mean, that's it really is an honor, because I understand the environment I'm in.
Yeah.
And so to be able to push in the ways I'm pushing feels like a privilege.
Yeah. Naomi, please share, because I know that your first profession is not in the church, but you've been ministering to young folk for a long time. Share your journey and how you get here.
Wow. Well, I wanted to be an attorney. People told me, you talk good, you argue good, so you should be a lawyer. And so I was in mock trial in high school, and then when I got to college, moved to Philadelphia for college, thought I would major in political science because that's allegedly what lawyers do. And I started to intern at a law firm. I was like the receptionist, but I just wanted to be in the environment. I was like, let me answer the phone, sure. And thought I was on my way. My nickname in college was Reverend. So there was also this other parallel thing going on.
Were you raised in the church?
I was raised in the church. Okay. Sang, I was formed fully as a human being in religious community.
Got it.
So public speaking, everything from public speaking to athletics to all of that was done in the context of religious schools and churches, communities. So I'm in the middle of teaching. I enjoy my job. I was not in my call story is not a situation where I was miserable and I didn't know. No, I loved my work. I loved my colleagues. I loved my students. I was satisfied and fulfilled. One day, I'm walking down the street and somebody comes up to me and says, "Are you a minister? Can you pray for me?" Now, I didn't have on any identifying paraphernalia. I didn't have on. There was no reason for this person to single me out. But she said, "You just have a presence, and I've been watching you, and I wondered if you could pray for me. Aren't you a minister?"
This was on a campus?
This was on the street of Philadelphia. I was taking steps at the time. I didn't have a car. So I ended up praying with this woman, but I was just like, that was odd. Second thing that happened was the pastor of the church I was attending at the time said, "So when are you going to say yes?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm a super church member. I'm here all the time, and I don't,
I pay my tithes.
I'm doing what I must. I'm fulfilling my obligation." And she just kept saying, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to feel like enough. There'll always be this nagging, lingering. And you can say yes now, or you can say yes later. But you're going to have to say yes.
Eventually. It'll catch up.
So I was like, what in the world is happening? And so the third thing that happened was I found out this program lost, the grant ran out, doesn't even exist anymore, called Taste of Seminary. Seminary in Chicago got money to bring pre-seminarians, people who were discerning, a call, to the seminary to experience a little bit of seminary. So we had seminary professors come and do courses, little day-long mini courses.
Really? That's amazing.
We went into the community and interviewed people in ministry, so a pastor, but also somebody who's running a faith-based nonprofit, a chaplain. And at the end of that week, I was like, so I could do this all the time? This is what my life could be like?
Did you know that world existed?
I didn't. I knew that people go to school. I just didn't see myself. I thought of pastoring as, this is somebody who's warm and fuzzy and I didn't see myself in that way. I was like, that's not me. So I had some vague, I hung around with a lot of Black women, religious scholars. So I had some sense of, wow, there's some really great thinking going on about God, about ministry. But I did not see myself as anything more than kind of a super church member. And but that program, I was looking at seminaries to apply to the next week. And I said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to seminary and then just come back to my local church and serve.
And teach my kids.
Give me a Sunday school class. And that is not what happened. But it was the best yes. It was the most risky yes, the scariest yes, all of that, but the best yes. So then went to seminary in Central PA, and sort of came out in all sorts of ways.
Came out in all sorts
of ways. So the parallel story is that I've always known myself to be something other than heterosexual, something other than straight. But and didn't come up in a religious environment where there was virulent homophobia. It just was never acknowledged as a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's another kind of erasure and dehumanization,
yeah.
right? But there wasn't like a violent, sending people to hell. But that's just not even something people do.
Right.
Or something people are.
Right.
So I was closeted, my line was, I think people, I love who I love. That was my line.
Mine too. Thank you, Lord, for the
hallelujah. And so it took me actually going to seminary in Amish country, central Pennsylvania, to meet black queer ministers who were unapologetically telling the truth about themselves and saying yes to the call.
Yes.
And so I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to make some decisions here. Without that nurturing environment of friends and professors, and ultimately a church, a United Church of Christ congregation that called me as part of a pastoral team, without that, I don't know that I would have had any kind of courage around coming out as a queer person. So I'm grateful so seminary then called me out as a minister, but also called me out as a queer person. And so I'm grateful for that. In seminary, Michael Brown died.
Yeah.
While I was in seminary.
And this is around 2013, 2015.
Yep.
I was in seminary at the same time.
Yep. And so I was so deeply, first of all, Trayvon died.
Mm-hmm. The verdict of
And then the verdict came out, and I was undone. I was pastoring at the time, pastoring an all-white congregation. It was very clear that I needed to give voice to what this meant.
Yeah.
And then Michael Brown was killed, and I ended up going to his funeral and the whole nine. So I think that in seminary I was also activated.
Yeah.
As a justice-seeking minister, as a minister who wanted to, in public, try to embody a prophetic voice, try to make some moral claims about what's right and what's just and what's godly.
Yeah. That's a coming out of itself,
yeah.
But it's like the community calling you out.
Yeah.
I like to think of Lazarus when Mary and Martha are waiting for Jesus to come, and he stays an extra day. And it was a sermon that I read, or not read, or was heard. And in that sermon, it was saying it was the community. It was not Jesus, but it was the community that had to usher out the calling out of Lazarus, and allowing him to come out. And even in his stench, because he had been there too long, right? Already too long. And even in his in death, calling that out. Yeah. And then the charges to the community, what will you do with it then? Yeah. So death, talking about Trayvon, talking about Mike Brown, all of these, like, the community had to respond. There was a response after that. So yeah, that was kind of calling out for as well.
It was. Particularly since at the sort of advent of the Black Lives Matter movement, once, Alicia Garza and Patrice Cullors and Opal Tometi had that Twitter exchange that became the movement for Black Lives, part of what people were saying was the Christian church has no moral authority, no moral claim to this space. This is not going to be a movement that is concentrating its power in religious institutions.
Yeah.
And so that was an even more profound invitation to, if you're going to come and you're going to wear your collar or wear your stole or come showing up as a representative of Christianity or a faith community, understand that you need to show up in a different kind of way because the church in many ways has let us down. That's why we are here now, And so, so that, it took me 4 years in seminary. That 4 years helped me to come out in so many ways, and leads me to the work I'm doing now, which is faith-based advocacy, is doing kind of radical theology in classrooms, and trying to continue to preach a word that both afflicts and comforts, right? Depending on the context.
Listen, I've heard a sermon. Listen, at least the one that you did at Living Water the other day, I said, please record it and send it to me. I was away, and I was just there, bedside Baptist, listening to it. And you did just that. Conflict and comfort. Who are the theologians? Past, present, and theologians don't have to be one who went to seminary and studied, like however you, you know, that grounds you and that speaks to you like no one else can.
I will start by saying Octavia Butler. So Octavia Butler is not a theologian as defined by the scholarly establishment. But Octavia Butler had a way of seeing beyond the present moment, of imagining a future and really issuing a prophetic warning about the future we were going to inherit.
Yes!
And so, and what I think her writing does for me is pushes me to remember that we can have some other kind of world, right? What science fiction to me does is pushes my imagination to the limits of what kind of world is possible to create. She was a master world builder. So her short stories, her most religious one is called The Book of Martha. It's a Black woman who encounters God.
So I got hip to Octavia, I'm going to be honest, 2018. I was dating someone at the time that got me into it, and I remember reading the first book, because I'm not a sci-fi person. I was like, nah, that ain't even my thing. And I actually read a comic version of it, because I'm a visual learner, to see the image and the words, and I was like, oh, this is what everybody been talking about? So, you know, I got 2 more books, but I'm getting that one. Martha?
Yes, The Book of Martha.
The Book of Martha.
It's a short story. You can find it online, and it's also in a collection of short stories that she has. That's the only print publication. It's in this collection. It's the most overtly religious work that she has, but I think that all of her work is deeply theological. And deeply spiritual. And so I'd say Octavia Butler. I also think about, I just am rereading Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman.
That's my dude.
You know, so much of his trajectory I'm realizing is he was deeply committed to ministry, to religious education. I mean, he was a scholar and a teacher. And also deeply introspective and reflective. I mean, we now give him this kind of label, mystic. I mean, he was just so interested in interiority.
Yes. What's happening on the inside?
What's happening on the inside. He said, we cannot have a successful movement. I mean, he was King's teacher, right? He
eulogized King,
right? We can't have a successful movement if we are not maintaining an interior kind of integrity and fortitude. And I'm constantly challenged by that, and want him to continue to teach me about what it means to have fortitude. You know, a strength that is unbothered. And unwavering, right?
People would label that as cocky, conceited, too confident. Yeah, that's...
Or even like pie in the sky. I mean, I think critics of Thurman at the time were like, he ain't on the front lines. He ain't making the good speeches. But he had a deep spirituality. And anyone who encountered him, people write about it and whatever, just, they were clear that he loved them, and he wanted people to get Jesus right. He talks about the religion of Jesus as opposed to the religion about Jesus, right? So I love Howard Thurman and his work. I think I'm thinking about art, poetry, like Lucille Clifton, who just Black woman writing about what it means to have your life be a constant creative act, making something from nothing.
Yes.
Weaving something out of mess, the mess that you inherited or whatever. So I love Lucille Clifton. Of course, the womanist mothers who first dared to challenge the kind of academic establishment.
We're going to get into pop culture.
Okay.
Most recently, we lost Kobe Bryant, and several other, his daughter, second born, was in this crash with him. And Gayle King did an interview with Lisa Leslie and brought up his past allegation during a time where the world, globally, internationally, was mourning this most recent tragedy.
Right.
Some people has a lot of strong words. Snoop Dogg had a lot of strong word about Gayle. I would say a lot of people. I mean, Black America, Black Twitter did not let go. Listen, and I don't even be on Twitter, but I was here for it.
Yeah, no, they
went in.
You may remember that Snoop Dogg called King out of her name because of an interview she did with WNBA star Lisa Leslie. During that interview, she asked Leslie about Kobe Bryant and his sexual assault case from 2003. A portion of that interview was posted online lacking context, and it prompted fierce backlash and a disturbing response from Snoop Dogg. King.
Two wrongs don't make no right. When you're wrong, you gotta fix it.
So with that being said, Gayle King.
I publicly tore you down by coming at you in a derogatory manner based off of emotions, me being angry at questions that you asked.
Overreacted.
I should have handled it way different than that.
What are your thoughts about using opportunities like this to bring up past allegations, especially when someone has passed? I've seen this done time and time again. We've seen it done with Michael. What are your thoughts in Gayle King's approach and the response that she's been getting? Because she too has had response.
Sure. So I've been thinking a lot about grief and public grief and the rules and terms that we seem to have around public grieving. And so what seemed to me that people, and Snoop, however disrespectfully, was trying to say something about how Gayle's questions apparently had violated the rules of grief. That, because what people were saying was, now is not the time, or wait, or he just died, or whatever. And so I have some questions around what kind of timelines and what kind of rules do we have? Can we be explicit, again, intentional and explicit about the rules that we have set around public grief? Did Gayle King have an obligation as a journalist to ask the hard questions? Have we nurtured a kind of media culture where the provocative question is the question that we want to ask because of ratings and whatever. I mean, what kind of pressures are on Gayle and others? How was Gayle used by the network? Now, nobody coerced Gayle, but what I'm saying is, how is this all part of this sick and twisted media culture?
And some felt like, regardless of the pressure the network was given to Gayle, is she had a responsibility to the Black. There's another culture, the Black culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so that leads to a second question I have around speaking ill of the dead. So people are like, don't speak ill of the dead. This is not what we do. Don't air dirty laundry. Haven't we closed that chapter? What? And I was on Facebook, like everybody else, pontificating about it. And in the aftermath, I went to a funeral last week where people in various ways who gave remarks gently told what some would consider to be harder truths about the person who had died. Not to shame or humiliate or drag the person, but to give honor to the fullness of relationship. Like, I loved this person, so I knew them fully. And that means I knew the harder things, and I knew the beautiful, joyous things that made it easy to love this person, right? And I thought, wow, so it is possible to tell the whole truth about a person who has died and not speak ill of them. Like, I don't think telling the truth is necessarily speaking ill. I think the truth can be told gently. Now, the difference is with the Kobe situation, you know, it was settled in a court. He was found. The question of guilt is still a question. I basically was on the side of, while I think that Lisa Leslie is not the person to ask about this, because I don't think that the question itself should be off limits.
Erica Hart, who is a professor and a advocate of non-binary and breast cancer survivor.
Okay.
I remember one of her tweets, and it was also posted on Instagram, immediately after Kobe passed, was check in on those who have been triggered by this, because public grieving for someone who has violated someone can be triggering.
Sure.
And I did feel some kind of way, because two feelings. One, I've never considered it, and I was be honest, I had never considered that, wow, if I have been violated by someone and that person passes away, how does that re-trigger me?
Yeah.
What is it doing to me? Is it a relief? Like, I mean, those are honest, right?
Sure.
Or is it a deeper grief? Because how anything settled out, how it was settled out, right? But I was also angry too, like, because all I can think about was Kobe, who Kobe left behind.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
and everybody else. It was not just Kobe, but like this attention that we're getting, and I'm always questioning, why do people post what they post? Like, are you trying to get the likes? Are you trying to get the attention? Like, this consumption, we're trying to consume, rather it's the like, the follows, around this grief, this loss, this crisis. So I was wrestling with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a conversation yesterday with a friend who was saying, I don't want to put people in a position to have to lie about me after I'm gone. To lie in the obituary, lie at the funeral. You know, I want to... It's interesting because I think what got lost in some of this was Kobe himself wrote later that, you know, I think that I thought something was going on that wasn't going on, and she thought something that...
He apologized.
He apologized.
He really did.
And so I think that Kobe, the kind of latter half, you know, beyond this incident, how Kobe moved on, it seemed like he was living in a redemptive kind of way. I mean, we don't know what the family fallout and whatever. This was a reparative kind of life. His commitment to picking his kid up from school, even if he had to fly, you know, he talked about this helicopter and why he had it in the first place, because he wanted to be able to pick his kid up after so-and-so. So he understood the need for redemption, it seems, the need to repair broken trust, the need to be his best self. So we don't need to coddle kind of his memory as if he didn't understand that there is some repair work to be done. Now, he didn't need to be accountable to me.
Right.
But so part of this is, you know, like,
right,
we be holding people accountable who aren't actually accountable to us.
Right, that's a whole nother thing.
But he understood he needed to be accountable to somebody because of the way he was living, the decisions he was making. So I want us to continue the conversation in Black spaces about public grief. What are the rules? What are the terms? And about truth telling after somebody has died in a way that is graceful and humble and gentle. But that doesn't, you know, I said, you know, we all been at that funeral where people in the room know or have been egregiously harmed by the person in the casket.
You see them, they like this.
They there, but they
folding their arms,
you know,
leaning back.
And if the rhetoric never acknowledges, like, we loved this person deeply, this person was ours, and yet there were some decisions we wish this person had made.
Yeah.
There was some pain that this person caused that still kind of reverberates in this community.
Yeah.
And we loved them. And they were ours. And we gonna miss them because they gone.
Yeah.
Right? To at least acknowledge, because them 15 people who sitting there with their arms folded want somebody to acknowledge this person was not perfect. Who is, right? So I don't know. It's a test case. And you know Snoop is gonna be on what is it? Red Table Talk.
Really?
I said, Lord.
I'm here for it. You know what I'm saying?
What you got to say? I want to hear what you got to say, Snoop. Come on.
I'm here for it. Listen, I am here for it. Snoop done went reggae at one point. He went gospel.
He did.
You know, he's
trying to figure it out, I guess.
Trying to figure out, keep up with the Joneses, whatever it is. But, you know, he did apologize too.
His mom got in his ear, apparently.
Yeah, well, I could understand his anger. Like, I could understand that because I sat with both feelings. Like, I could understand his anger. Like, this is not the right time. Like, and I'm not even a Kobe fan like that. And I'm a basketball fan. Sure. I couldn't stand when he got on the court because I was like, I was a hater because my team was the Heat.
Okay.
The Heat and Celtics.
Okay.
Boston Celtics. But when that dude came on, just like Jordan, I couldn't stand him. Yeah. But my dude, LeBron, I don't care where you go, you always have a place in my heart. You need to come back to Miami, but you always have a place in my heart.
Yeah, no, it was complicated. So what we saw play out was the complexities of Black pain, Black grief. My brother, who was a Kobe fan, I remember him being a kid, having Kobe posters and whatever, said to me, why does this hurt so much? He said, I didn't even know him. I never met him. He said, I kept trying to remember whether I actually saw him play. But this hurts. Why does this hurt so much? So there was something that happened, right? And so I want us to continue to work through what it means to collectively be experiencing something in the ways we maybe hurt each other in the process of trying to deal with some collective pain and grief and whatever. So it was fascinating to witness.
I have a question. This is, we're coming at the end of our segment. But who do you think you're called to in this season? And who do you believe is drawn to you?
Oh, my. This is like my existential question, so thank you.
I felt it in the air.
Wow. You know what came up in my mind? I was at this event this morning for work, supporting a colleague who manages the Philadelphia Youth Commission. So they had a Black History event this morning. So I'm there, I'm just sitting as a participant or whatever, and my colleague sort of introduces me in the room and says, I'm so happy to have my colleague here with me. So a college student who's part of the Youth Commission came up to me and was asking me, she basically said, I've never met anybody like, so you're a minister? And you, huh? It was like cognitive dissonance for her. And so at the end of our conversation, she was like, I just would love to, can we have lunch at some point or whatever? At City Hall, you know, people, elected officials and others come visit me. And they say, you know, I heard what you said at the so-and-so, or that prayer you did at the so-and-so. Can we talk? So I feel like people have been drawn to me who are trying to understand how I exist.
My God, on today.
You know,
that's a whole word.
How are you possible? And it really touches me because this is the question that I sit with and I live with. Like, am I possible? Continue to remind myself, like, I'm here, I exist, so I am part of the divine imagination. You know, even when people are like, that ain't legitimate or that ain't. So I feel like people are drawn to me because of that kind of confusion and trying to understand. And then they say, wow, so that means that whatever XYZ I'm trying to do and be is possible, right? So that's I'm like, is that a congregation? Like, what is that? What is that? What is that? It's like people, you know, random people. So I'm just trying to sit with what that means for me vocationally. Does that mean I'm just kind of floating an itinerant kind of minister in public and, you know, not really settled? Does that mean that there's a congregation of people like that who are looking to? I don't know. You hit me in my.
Listen, I hit you. You hit me right back because I wasn't ready for that response, and I'm sitting with it, taking deep breath over here, because I'm thinking that phrase even to myself. How am I possible? Knowing the journey that I've been and being at this moment right now, sitting next to you. How is this even possible?
How is this possible? How is this possible? How? Pray tell.
My God, on today, you have tuned in to TTYL or not. I am sitting with the Reverend Naomi Washington. Thank you so much for sitting with me. Can you tell the folks where they can contact you or where what's coming up next with you so that they can be on the know?
Next. So, in my job at City Hall, I am recruiting for commissioners. We are starting the first ever Mayor's Commission on faith-based and interfaith affairs.
Yeah.
So it'll be a body of folks who come from around the city, various religious traditions, diverse in all the ways we can be diverse, I'm hoping, who will advise city government and help us collaborate more effectively and more strategically.
That's good work.
So we're doing that. I'm launching that actually next week. So stay tuned throughout the spring. You'll be hearing about how to get involved if you're so inclined. And again, I am continuing to teach at Villanova. We're closing out the semester at the end of April, and I hope to be writing something that will get published about my experience teaching, doing theological education on the inside.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited. I'm really excited about that. But justice.pastor.naomi @gmail.com is my email address. If you are so inclined to reach out, please do.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Tune in next time. Peace.
Subscribe on YouTube for full episode. TTYL or not.